Good evening and welcome to this new edition of A Walk Down Memory Lane. I'm your host, Earl Baston, and co-host Dennis Brown. And we are joined this evening by none other than Norbert Simons. Dennis, you would know Norbert back in your time playing for Somerset, but Norbert would have started out with one of your first loves too, Dennis, in track and field. Mr. Simons, first of all, thank you for joining.
Thank you. Good evening.
Let's start off. Let's look back at your time at track and field. What, in a sense, what got you? Because there were so many sports going on back in your day. But talk about track and field. What attracted you to track and field?
Hey Earl, just before you go, he goes. Without the girls, Mr. Simons, how did you get into track and field?
What was that, Dennis?
Without the girls, chasing the girls, how did you get into track and field?
That's quite interesting. As you may or may not know, that I grew up down North Shore, right? And I was running, school sports at Prospect Primary. And then I went to Sounds, and at that time, and I think still is today, that if you didn't play football or cricket per se, you wasn't known as a football or cricketer then. You didn't really get a chance to really do anything else. But in my third year, I ran into school sports, I think, at Sands. And I won the 100. So that's how I really got started at Sands. And then I think that by the time I got to my fourth or fifth year, I think it was, guys like Stanley Douglas and Carlson Phillips and Gladwin Conyers encouraged me to come train with them up at National Stadium. So that's where that, yeah.
Dennis, it would appear that you know a little more that he's alluding from, because
Yes. Quite a fellow.
No. What Dennis is alluding to is the story that we were in Sands, right, and didn't have a bike, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sands got out at 3:40,
right,
and we were up the stadium by 4:00.
What? It weren't just training that drove you to get up there that fast.
No, because when we got up, we got up before the girls from Barclay, Debbie Jones, and all them girls came up there, and we guys used to warm up before they got there, and when they came, we told them, girls, you got to warm up in your bloomers. Run in front of us. I think that hold on a minute.
Yeah. So in those track and field days, what were some of the highlights?
For me?
Yeah.
I have to start off going to the very first Carifta games. In 1972, Carifta Games was held in Barbados. And we had about 34 athletes that went, and I was fortunate enough to be one of them. And that experience opened my eyes to a lot of things. The fact that we took a lot of things for granted in Bermuda. I remember we got back, our principal, Mansfield Brock. In those days, I called him the critter, right? Had us in his office, and he asked us about our experience. And I told him that I think that even though me and many others didn't have as much as others that made Sounds, we were in a better position than some of the people that we saw at Carifta. So that was an eye-opening experience too. It was a humbling experience, actually. So for me, that was it for me. Yeah. So yeah.
Dennis?
Okay, so nice to be back. Nice to have the show back. before we go on, I contacted Earl, I think it was just before Christmas, Earl.
Yes, yes.
So I take my hat off to, and he's resting in peace now, to Jimmy Tweed.
Yes.
He called me on December the 10th and asked me, what happened to that show that you and Earl used to do about back in the day, blah, blah, blah. So here we are today, because 10 days later, he passed on December the 20th. And I contacted Earl, and Earl jumped to us, being back together with this show, because I think this show gives not just the older people, but if the younger people are watching, it gives them insight of what type of person Norbert was back in the day compared to what he is today.
Well, I'm still an idiot.
I'm not going to tell them everything, but I always like to talk about back in the day. I always go back. So, it's nice to be back. Just looking forward to, upcoming shows. But so my question for Norbert is, who were the key coaches that influenced you early and influenced you later in track and field?
Well,
or teachers, coaches or teachers.
I would say when it came to track and field, like I said, let me say since I had to go back to my days at Prospect Primary, because we always had battles at school, guys like Michael Smith, Froggy Simmons. Yeah, we had some really quick guys at primary school, and I used to hold my own. But like I said, I played a lot of neighborhood football. So you talk to President Sheriff Deal and stuff. We had a team called 11 Stars, right? And so that's where I played my football, and I played a little cricket as well. But my forte was running. And I'm gonna tell you a little funny little story, right? The Arboretum, because we were in Prospect Primary, right? Down the Arboretum, they used to have orange trees, lemon trees, grapefruit trees, right? And in those days, we used to have a book bag. It was like a little suitcase, right? So, you guys used to go up there and raid the tree. And so when we got caught, them boys say, "No, but you're the fastest. You got to go first." So, and we started like a little relay thing and just to get away, right? So, that's where it really came from, because in those days on North Shore, we used to run through the hills. Like our days was, especially during the summer, you played football, you played cricket, you went swimming. And everywhere we went, we either ran or walked, right? And I learned quickly that my strength was in speed, not distance running, right? So, but I was a little bit introverted, I would say. I never really, let's say I lacked in confidence until I went to Sam's. Then, like my first 2 years, I really didn't get involved in anything. And then, for whatever reason, I remember Don Somerset Cricket Club. That's where we had our first sports day on Somerset Cricket Club, right? And I ran the 100, and at that time was guys like Tom Morrissey, Peter Gunder Smith, and they were all the favorites. And I came out, because I was always been a bit precocious and ignorant, right? So I came out in all black. I even painted my spikes black. Right? And I won the 100, and that's where it really started, right? So that's what I call myself, the Black Dasher back then.
Okay.
So yeah, so that's where it really started. So then I got, like I said, with guys like Blackman Conyers, Stanley Douglas, who we were all classmates, and Carlson Phillip, because Carlson Phillip had started competing in 71. Well, somewhere in 1970 or something like that. And so they encouraged me to come train with them at National Sports Center.
Okay. So my last question on track, how did competing in track and field shape your discipline and mindset as a young person?
How did it shape me?
Tell the truth. Tell the truth.
I would say to you this, that the real shaping for me in track and field came when I attended Dalhousie University, right? And I did a course in sports psychology, right? Then I realized that I had not reached my potential because I was so busy making sure that everybody else was okay. People used to tell me that I was a better sprinter than Cal Deal, but because the way it was set up, Cal was the premier sprinter, and I think that because we trained together, and to be honest, training sessions were really geared towards his strengths and ability, right? And psychologically, you don't realize that when you train somebody and they're used to them coming first, that you never put yourself in position to be first. So, and I realized that in my second year at university when I did sports psychology about the psychological impact. And so I would say that experience at Dalhousie shaped me more than actually competing in my first couple of years, because I was a little bit all over the place, right? There was other things going on in my life, and for me, going to university and finding that I was a little better than I gave myself credit, that helped me. So that's what really motivated me.
Getting the opportunity to run against obviously and train with some of the fastest guys Bermuda's ever seen. What was those experiences like? I mean, because you all came from different parts of the island.
Well, you know what? I think that, and this has to be, I think this was key, like you said, we had numbers. You're talking about big good training, and for us, unlike today, there were less distractions. But like I said, the motivation for some of us was the camaraderie that we developed, and the social skill, socialization that occurred in track and field for us at the time. So going to training was like going out, right? So you had, like I said, but there's at least 30 of us training. You're talking about the girls, and if you know the days, Dennis and Earl, you understand.
Yes.
You've had scenes, you've had looked at the girls at Barkley and Whitney and the other places, right? And so to go training and see those people there and developing relationships was key. Then you think that when we were sprinting, it was myself, Cal Deal, Dennis Trott, then Glenn Lake and Mike Sharp, and then Gregory Simons and Vaughn Harvey and Ronaldo Swan and others came along, and Mike Swan, God rest his soul, came along. There was competition in training, there were, in numbers. For instance, on days when we had to do 12 300s.
Oh, whoa.
I'm talking about we had to do 3 sets of 4 12, the total 12 300, 3 sets of 4 300s, right? Because you had enough people, everybody got a chance to take a lead in it, right? And so you were pushed in training. Training sessions became competitive in the sense that you had 6 guys out there, and when the time came for you to lead, you knew that you couldn't let anybody pass you, right? So that was the thing. So that was the greatest thing about our eras, because the numbers were there. The numbers were there that pushed you, and so as a result, you developed. On the one hand, you develop a lot of camaraderie and the desire to compete. But on the other hand, the psychological part of it was that you knew there was a packing order. And because you trained together, you never really got out of that packing order. So, yeah, I would say that.
What would you say, looking back at things, if we had a synthetic track when you guys were running? How different would the times have been? Because you guys were doing amazing times on grass.
On grass.
Yes.
You just I'm going to talk about an experience. The first experience I had running on artificial surface was 1973 in Venezuela, right? Now we went out there to warm up, right? And, I naturally had high knee lift, right? And we started running, and then next thing you know, I thought my knees was up my chest. So it was a little different. And I think that if we had, like I said, Caldio was running 10.3, 20.8 on grass.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that if we had the experience at the opportunity with what we had, I think we would have been better athletes. What a lot of people don't know is that, or don't realize, is that in 1973, Cal, for under 18 sprinters, Cal was ranked number 1 in the 100, and I was ranked number 4 in as far as U.S. goes, right? So, we were, without realizing it, we were world-class athletes. And but because at that time it was not taken serious by the community, and so you didn't really appreciate and understand your true value until you got older, right?
Number 1 and number 4.
Yeah.
In the 70s.
Yeah.
Running on grass.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Cal was phenomenal.
Right. Yeah.
And then, and as and then I think around 1974, I think that what was interesting about 1974, I was a little disillusioned after coming back from the CAC championships, right? I was a little disillusioned before that because personally frustrated that, that you weren't getting the credit or recognition that you was doing, even by the coaches. I stopped training for a little while. I stopped. And then I came back in January and we went to Carifta. And our 4x1 relay team won the gold medal, set the Carifta record that stood for about 11 years. And we asked Jamaica in their backyard. I think we were the first team to beat Jamaica. In fact, we were the first team to beat Jamaica in the 4x1 relay.
Wow.
And our 4x4 relay got the bronze medal.
So I mean, the year we won Carifta was what, 72? 73?
No, we won it in 75.
75? Okay.
In Bermuda.
Right. So all of that was building up towards that, wasn't it?
Yes, because I think that, like I said, I had gone off to university and I pretty much had aged out.
Right.
And we did such the first Carifta in Bermuda, we did a phenomenal job in Bermuda. So yeah, I think we had athletes, like I said, we were driven. And I think part of that drive was the fact that we had such a close relationship and it was like a community unto ourselves, right? Something that's missing today.
Right. Well, let's turn the page a little bit and let's get into the football aspect, because as you and Dennis would have one of the closest relationships when we talk about the Silver City and Somerset Trojans. But you started off with the junior team. A lot of the players that you were coaching when you went to Somerset were going to Sands at the time. Is that correct?
Yeah. I'm not sure if I showed you the story before. I was at Sands teaching. Cal Simons was at West Ham. Kenny Kim, the great Kenny Kim, approached us, and he said, and I said to me anyway that our junior program is in a little bit of disarray. I like what you're doing at Sands with your football team. Could you come down and help us? And that's what I did. I came down and started working with the junior team. I was the trainer for the first division team, and I was the manager for the reserve division team. Yeah, so that's where I started. Yeah.
Dennis, you see a guy like Simons come in, track and field background. Some of the early training was it geared towards football or was it geared towards track and field training?
Phenomenal, because Norbert taught us the importance of stretching. Right, so many players. I've always been pretty flexible, but many players had a hard time touching the toes. And I even look at guys, young people today, the flexibility part of the game is basically ridiculous. So Norbert taught us the importance of stretching. And that's definitely a part of track and field. So the flexibility part, stretching, you stretch, you don't pull, you eliminate pulled muscles. So he made sure that we were physically fit as well as agile as well. So I mean, he gave us some stretches back in the day, mercy. But at the end of the day, that help you with your athleticism on the pitch and stuff like that. So that was he was a godsend when he came to Somerset. As our medic at first, and then we already also know he transitioned higher, but he was for a first class and professional work ethic to us at that time.
But Earl, I might add that you see, I had a track and field background, but I specialized in two sports at University of Dalhousie, right? Football and track and field, and basketball was the third one, right? But my primary interest was in this. And the thing I learned about football was that at that time, because we had to do a real deep analysis into it, right? Is that most the average football player and usually a midfield player at that time was covering about 3,200 yards per game. And so when I used to train Somerset, I used to work it out. And let me put a caveat in and say most of that was walking, right? But and I used to try to structure training sessions, especially fitness sessions, for them to cover at least 4,000 meters in the game. So that's why guys would talk about the suicide runs and the heels and stuff. And I always try to make sure that it include variations where you're sprinting on an angle, all the movements that was required in football. Right. So yeah.
Coaching Somerset's junior team and doing the various other things along the way. When you first went, what was your mind frame of what you wanted to get out of the players at the junior program? Because you knew you're feeding to that senior program.
Well, when I first joined Somerset, I was assisting Myron Bean. He was the junior coach. And I worked with him for about a year and a half because he wanted to retire, and I learned a lot from him. And what made it easier for me is that I had a number of players from Seance who played for Somerset, and between Somerset and Warwick Sack. So it was a little easier. The transition was a lot easier and smoother because of that relationship that had developed after my first year at Seance, right? Yeah.
Dennis?
Okay, so the medic part did an excellent job. And you didn't realize that that we were talking at Somerset a few weeks ago. I was interviewing you.
Yeah.
I was interviewing you for the tribute for your award. You didn't realize I was interviewing you for that.
He realized it afterwards.
Yeah. So I asked you this already, and I want you to tell the people.
Yeah.
So we won the league in 19
81, 82, 83, and 84.
Right. So we won the league 3 years in a row, undefeated.
Yeah.
And then we won it again under Larry in 1986, 87.
Yeah.
And then 1987, 88, Larry resigned for personal reasons. And just how did you feel when you were asked to coach the defending champions?
Dennis, I know we talked about it, but I wasn't in awe. I knew because I had heard everything that was said that I was a little concerned, and because that's a shortcoming that I have, that I just didn't feel that I was worthy enough.
Right.
But I'm a different beast, because when you tell me I can't do something,
yeah,
I'm going to show you that I can. And so coaching the juniors, being in the managerial position as team manager and stuff, made it a little easier to transition. But I'm not going to tell you that I was uncomfortable, because here I am. I'm because I said I'm looking at you guys like Dennis Braun and Kenny Thompson and all the other players who are legends. And I wasn't sure what I could bring to the table that could make a difference. So what I did do was that I went and talked to people like Neops Lewis, Randy Horton, and the one person I didn't tell you about was Livingston Tuzo, God rest his soul. He was like my what's the right term to use? I can't say confidant, but he was someone that I turned to a lot to get guidance and advice from. Even though he coached Village, but he was like a mentor to me, right? So if I needed somebody to bounce ideas off, that's who I went to. And the other thing I said to myself, I said, and I didn't tell you this, Dennis, but I relied on you as my captain, and I said I'm gonna do the same thing I did with my junior team. When it comes to team selection and working on strategies, I always relied, always sat down and talked to my captain, because at the end of the day, you go on the field and you're the lead on the field, right?
Right, and I agree with that, because like I mentioned in the tribute, I called a meeting with the team, and I said we will not let Norbert fail in this position.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So at the end of the day, you had the backing from all of us.
Yeah.
On the team, and that we were pretty successful.
Yeah, and Dennis, I think that for me, the relationship, and I have to say, the relationship as the trainer, I got to know the players, in that role, because I think that, and again, that's my own personal philosophy too, right? I think that we could talk about tactics all we want. We could talk about everything else, but if you can manage men or women, then all the tactics are not going to work if you can't manage, because man management is important, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it is important. I think that I learned early that okay, for instance, Dennis, I could talk hard to you.
Yeah.
But a Kelly Simmons and a Randy Simmons, you could not go at, because you were losing.
Stevie Rodney couldn't go at it.
You couldn't go at certain players.
Yeah.
You put your arms around.
Yeah.
And try to pull them along, and other players you could go at them, and other players you just have to talk crap to get the best out of them.
I agree.
So for me, I use what strengths I had as a person on being able to deal with people, right? Because I learned early in life that I don't know what it is that I had an ability to communicate with people, right?
Right.
So and that was one of my strengths, and I relied on the fact that I had people like Larry Smith, who I watched in training and learned things from. Rudy Miners, Randy Horton, who was before them. I watched and learned things from them, and so that kept me in good stead. Right?
So how because I know how difficult Somerset spectators are. Because I over the years I gave some French words and stuff like that myself.
Yep.
So how were you taken in by the Somerset spectators and even the Somerset Trojan players?
I'm going to start my junior players. I had a good relationship with the junior players and also with the parents. Right. Mm-hmm. Again, I think it was about relationship building as you go along, right? Because I knew I came in, everybody, when things go wrong, everybody, you're not from Somerset. Go back where you come from, and you're a track and field boy. Y'all heard that all the time, right? But what kept me good was that when you walk in the changing room and you have frank conversations with your players, it made a big difference, right? I felt enough that if I wasn't doing something right, I knew my players would tell me. Mm-hmm. Okay, and if they were uncomfortable with something I did, I knew they would tell me, right? And the question was that not only telling you, but the fact that it's how you receive it. Because like I've always believed is, I can only take responsibility for what I say. Mm-hmm. I can't take responsibility for how you receive it.
Right. Sure.
And that's why I govern myself. So, I knew I had to create an environment where players would feel comfortable enough to say, in a group setting or pull me, and I'm at some of you guys pull me aside to sometimes I'm not sure if this is working or I don't agree with what you did here or I didn't agree with that. No, I had to recreate that environment so that you could feel comfortable enough to come and tell me these things, because if not, we could have lost one another a long way along the way. Right? But come and talk to me. And I think that was one of my strengths. So yeah, and so when you talk about Somerset, the pressure was great. You're sitting on and you're trying to do something, and somebody go up in the hill and on the balcony and start calling you all sorts of names, calling you your stupid youngins, your blah blah. I remember one time we played Eagles. The season before, we didn't beat Eagles at all, even though we won the league, right?
Right.
And we beat them 5-3 up Somerset, right? Now, Miss Butterfield used to always have hot chocolate for me or something for after the game up in the canteen. And I went up to and I didn't go up there for anything else, but I just went up to get my little hot chocolate like she always had for me, right? And I got surrounded by former players and some fans talking about, yeah, man. I'm not going to tell you what they said to me. Some things they said, yeah, you won the game, but you should have won 8-3. I said, well, look, guys. And I said, so then I said to them, okay, guys, why don't you come down and give me a hand? If you see things are not going on the way you feel they should go, come down and help. Because remember, then it's my first season I was coaching and didn't have an assistant, right?
Right, yeah.
And so they said to me, F them boys, that you haven't read. And I said, well, if you have a problem with come down and give them boys, then get off my back, because I'm going to go down and deal with them, and you're not. So just keep the comments to yourself, because I was feisty too, right? I had and then from there on an event like that, right? So, I knew that every game, you always had, if you're in a leadership role, you have to be prepared to take the criticism.
Yeah.
If you're not prepared to stand up and lead and know that you're going to be criticized and you can't handle it, then don't do it. So I wasn't afraid to take on the lead.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the opposition where we often got visits from the UK teams in the now Premier Division. Obviously, you guys played against the likes of Manchester United, Arsenal, Aston Villa as well. But I wanna turn to Dennis first, because Dennis, as a player, you're gonna go up against some of the highest level players in the world.
Okay, excuse me a minute. Go ahead.
What was your preparation like in getting ready for a team like Manchester United?
Well, it was an honor to play against quality players at that time. I remember Manchester United had Brian Robson, who was the England captain, and other, few more international players as well. So it was a pleasure. So I always prepared the same way. Whether it was playing against a touring team or playing a local game. So, rest and prior preparation were very important to me. So, we had the opportunity to play, like you said, we played against Manchester United, Arsenal, Villa, Tottenham, Oxford. Probably the best team that I played against, best foreign team, was a Russian team, Moscow Lokomotiv.
Yeah, Lokomotiv. Yes.
The movement off the ball from these guys was absolutely out of this world. So we got to learn. We learned and we brought that back to our game because, like you said, the touring teams used to come to Bermuda every year. So we were either the league champions or a champion in a trophy. So we got the opportunity to play against a lot of those touring teams. So we'll never forget. I even scored against United, sent the keeper the wrong way on a penalty.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I have some good memories, Steve. The other memory was because Norbert asked me about that too. That we were talking about the Aston Villa. They beat us 12-0.
12-0. Yep. BAA.
But we learned from that day because it was raining all day.
Yeah.
All day, like from morning right on up to the game, it was raining. So we had on our regular hard studs, right? But the English guys had on long studs, right? So the studs that usually go in the back of your boots, they had them all over. Right. So we learned from that. So moving forward, that's what I did. I put all long studs in my boots, when it rained and stuff like that. So that was a learning because we couldn't even stand up that night. But it was a good experience, for me, and I'm sure for my teammates as well.
Yeah. No, but to you as the coach, what was the training like leading up to that? Because everybody wants to start when you're playing a Manchester United or Arsenal, Tottenham. Everybody wants to start. So what was the training sessions like leading up to that?
Yeah, I called in the big guns. I called in Rudy Minus. I called in, I think Larry Smith came out to help us too. I said, look, no, we need to get some. Because in the back of my head, I was thinking about that Aston Villa score.
Right.
I said, I'm sorry, guys, but I'm going to call on people that can help me defensively to get this team ready. Right? So I called on Rudy Minus and Larry Smith came out and helped us to get ready for their game, right? But I also did something that we went for lunch that day at Loyalty Inn. So I tried to treat it like a cup match. And so we went for lunch that day and then we had the game that night. I think I'm gonna tell the story, Dennis. We had a player that he didn't come training, right? He didn't come training. I'm not gonna call the names, right? He didn't come training. And so when we went for lunch at Loyalty, Stevie said to me, Stevie Riley said, look, Sams, I think it needs to be in the squad, right? Okay. And when we discussed it over lunch, he says, he doesn't have to start, but I think he needs to be in the squad. I said, okay. All right, Stevie. And I'll drop out. All right. So I said, okay. Because he said, I'm on the way of the game. I don't need to be playing this game and stuff, right? So and while we was talking about the time when Stevie started telling us about when he played Aston Villa. He said, I struck this ball and the keeper picked it up the air like it was nothing. I said,
Yeah, I remember that.
So, you know, and like I said, talking to your senior players, you know, I took on what they had to say, right? And so I named the score that night, right? I named the starting 11. And the player stood up and said, I ain't starting. I said, you haven't been training. I ain't starting. If I ain't starting, I'm gonna take my clothes off and leave the changing room. I said, no. You know, I'm a nice guy, right? And stuck no tomatoes I don't take. I said, well then take your clothes off and leave. Well, I walked out the changing room that night and it started. Simons, I paid $20 to come with Somerset to play, not to take 20 girls. You need to get your so-and-so ass out of Somerset. That on there, blah, blah, blah. And this is just walking out the changing room. And I said, oh, God. And if you recall the night, right? They even had bleachers on the club side of the wall for people to sit. Somerset Cricket Club was rammed. Rammed that night, right? And I'm sitting up there saying, oh, God, no. And I'm, you know, like I said, I'm not going to get involved in it. Boy, I got cussed out that night so bad. You know, it's a good thing I was on birth control. I got chowed up that night. You know, and so I walked on and on. That further added to all the other stress that was on, right? But the game went on, and we played well that night. I thought Somerset played well that night. So much so that Randy Benjamin, God rest his soul, who I didn't really have much for, and he didn't have much for me. But he wrote an article stating that that's the best he saw Somerset play. And I thought we played extremely well that night. And after the game was over, people that were sitting up by the scoreboard came off the field, because they heard it. Everybody heard it. Right. They said, you're doing a good job, mate. And I took comfort in that, because I said, shucks, I'm thinking that as long as I don't lose 12 nothing or nothing like that, and we lost 4-1, right? So, you know, I think, and a lot of that credit has to go, and all of the credit has to go to the players, right? Because they stepped up, man. They stepped up in spite of everything, and I can't take credit for that performance, right? The players have to take credit for it, right? So, yeah. So.
What about that Arsenal match?
You asking me or Dennis?
I'm asking you about the Arsenal match.
Again, by then I had George Bregman as we were working together. We lost that game 1-0. But we had the opportunity to score as well, see. It's not like we didn't have opportunities. I'm talking about a clear-cut opportunity where, you know, the keeper saved with his feet, getting in the wrong way and stuck his right leg up and cleared the ball, right? But on that night, guys like Chocolate Bear, Chocolate Bear danced that night. Chocolate danced on the left wing, Troy danced on the right wing. You know, and yeah. I thought that game that we played extremely well again. Defensively, we were solid. And Reggie Guns, God rest his soul, he was making saves that night, man. Yeah, you know. So for me, again, the players shared that night that they were quality. And I recall stating to someone, even after the Manchester United game, I said, I felt that the problem the Somerset team was at the time that winning was so easy for them, right? That the motivation part to get up and play, especially in the first half of the season, was the challenge. Because after Christmas, Somerset was like a day and night team. You know, throughout, even that one, when we went 4 seasons or won 3 or 4 league championships back to back, right? We won most of them in the second half of the season because guys just knew that this is the business end of the season and we're going to perform. And for me, that's what showed up against Manchester United against Arsenal, because then we played a team from the Azores, was it, Dennis? And we
Yeah,
played them 0-0.
yeah.
Yeah. So the challenge, we had players that needed to be challenged. And I remember saying to the BFA that we are not doing our battle players a great service by not having them playing against foreign opposition on a regular basis, because, you know, day in and day out, you play the same team, you get up for the game, but when you know it was the business end, when it came to business time, Somerset, you couldn't beat a Somerset team. I don't care who you're in charge of, right? When those guys put their heads down for what play today, you couldn't beat them.
Yeah. Dennis?
Yeah. So one other question on coaching and your philosophy. How did coaching at that level shape your long-term views on development of the Bermuda athlete, like the Bermuda football player? How did that shape you, not just as a coach, but as a person on the development of Bermuda football? I think you
Okay.
did that.
Okay. Yeah. I'm gonna say this, Dennis. All sports I learned because, like I said, at Dalhousie, right, and I have to go back to my days at Dalhousie, right. And what people didn't know at the time was that Dalhousie's phys ed program was #1 in Canada and #3 in the world, right? And I did not get my degree in teaching at Dalhousie, right? Because I didn't pass it. I failed it because of my personality and all the other stuff that went on, right? So my degree was in human movement, right? My degree was in human movement. So I did a heavy concentration in biomechanics and the like. So my philosophy was shaped by that all sports are about angles. Okay? All sports are about angles. And once you understand that basic dynamic, then you can transfer those skills to other sports. And yes, track and field was my sport, and I excelled at basketball in university. And so when it came down to the basis of all sports is that, you have to have a solid defense, you have to have an engine room, and you have to have an attack, right? So what it shaped me is that first of all, I think that we have to understand that if we're gonna make it in football, cricket, whatever sport, we must have athletes. Okay? When I say athletes, I'm talking about people who are physically strong, who are mobile and the like, have good hand-eye coordination, good feet-eye coordination, and have an understanding that fitness is the key. Right? I don't know what sport you are, right? And so my philosophy is that even when I work with you guys in Somerset, I used to say that my goal is to get you ready for the overtime of the FA Cup final. Because that's the last game of the season. And if you're fit enough to run 90 minutes, then everything else will fall in place. Because my philosophy has always been is that the first thing to leave you when you're tired is your skills. That's when you make your mistakes. Physically and mentally, you make more mistakes when you're tired and out of shape. So, working with Somerset, we won a lot of games late because of our fitness. Won a lot of games late because even when I was coaching the juniors, I try to tell my players in the first 15 minutes, you hold on to the ball, knock the ball around, run at a team first, and then after, because you're going to get your second man, after 15 minutes, you're going to feel winded. So that's your time you keep the ball and knock it around and make your opposition chase because you don't want them to recover. And in the second half, they're tired and you're still good. psychological part of it all too, right? But so my philosophy, even when it came to, because to me, if you're a coach, you could transfer your skills. If you could coach football, you could coach track and field. You could transfer your skills. I mean, as long as you have the basics done, right? And so, and because I came from a track and field background and I played a lot of basketball, it was easy to transfer skills and understand the dynamics of team sports. But my first love was track and field, and I did go back to it, right? But yeah, and so for me, that's what it was. I think that it's just about trying to develop a philosophy that suits you. I knew that I could not be a Randy Horton type personality. You know, because Randy Horton was a person that you walked in the changing room, you shivered. You shook, you were nervous. That was not my personality. That was not my personality. So I could not try to be like a Randy Horton because, and I learned that in University of Toronto. And I say I learned that in University of Toronto when the lecturer said to us that, look, don't go into the classroom where I did my teaching education. Don't go in the classroom acting like you know it all. Because the students will see through you right away. Be honest. When you don't know, and be honest and say you don't know. So I use that same philosophy in football. I say, you know, if I wasn't sure about something, Dennis, what do you think? Kenny Thompson, what do you think? Right? When it came down to try and get players to run off the ball, I went to Niels Lewis. Niels, how can I get players to run off the ball? Niels would say, I'm having problems with it too. And when he said that to me, I said, okay, you're not too far off. Right? And Niels says, okay. And then I said, how do I get players to come training and stuff? He says, they don't want to come training, drop them. You know, so where I thought I was weak, I asked for help. Like I said. And as I was telling Dennis at Somerset, when he's asking me questions, he said, you know, when I went to university, they gave you a paper to do, right? You had to put resources, right? You know, you go to the library to get information, you go do research, right? So why should it be different when you become a coach? Because you become a coach, you're not the be all and the end all. If I didn't have the answer, I didn't know where to get the answer, I could try and find it. Because at the end of the day, if I try to think that I could do it all, the only person that's going to hurt is the players that I'm responsible for. Because my job was to try and get the best of the players and do whatever's necessary to help them to achieve their goals. Right? So I would, if I come to Dennis and says, now Dennis, how can I get Kelly to do this, sir? Dennis might say, well, you got to fuck him off. I'm sorry. I didn't right? But, you know what I'm saying is so because the psychology part and what I'm trying to say is that we could talk about tactics, we could talk about skills, but it's that psychology, this is psychological part that we have to work on, right? Because what can I do to get this player up? What can I do to get this player to understand that his value is more than what he's willing to give? You know? And so I think that was one of my strengths. So I could come in change room and start talking, you know, Dennis, we talk a whole pile of crap. Yeah, but you also know the right players that you can't talk that type of stuff to, right? And other players need to feel the confidence in you to come and tell you this is what I'm going through. Right? Because if you can get your players to be comfortable enough to say, well, this is what I'm going through, then you could help them. Right? So, yeah. So the psychological part of sports is really important. It's really important. Yeah?
I'm going to ask you the second to last question, and I'll let Dennis ask the final question. What has sport taught Norbert Simons?
Sport has taught me that no man is an island. Right? Whether it's an individual sport or team sport, sport has taught me that how to solve certain problems, right? Sport is a great leveler. You could be on top today, on the bottom tomorrow. The difference is how you're going to respond in both situations, right? So sport has taught you how to navigate certain things, right? Like for instance, sometimes you to shut up. Sports has taught me that sometimes you just need to shut up and allow people around you to say all the things they want to say, right? Because if you're sitting and Dennis could tell you that, and Earl, you could tell you that when you're on the field playing, everybody's got something to say.
Oh yes.
Everybody's a critic. Everybody's a coach, and hindsight is always 20/20 vision, right? So sports has taught you that under pressure you have to make decisions. Under pressure, how are you going to respond when you're under pressure, right? It tells you a lot about yourself, right? And people always say, okay, when this happens, that happens. This is what I'm going to do. That's not necessarily true. I don't think the only time a person really gets to know themselves is when they're under pressure, right? That's the only time you get to know yourself, because you can say, oh, if somebody did this to me and somebody did that to me, this is how I'm going to respond. But when it happens, so for me, sports has taught me that every day is another day to learn, right? Sports is life, right?
Yes.
And unfortunately, in this country, we have not given sports the respect that is due, right? But sports teaches you how to navigate and circumvent a lot of things in life, right? If you could play under pressure, if you could play in front of 50,000 people, if you could survive all of that, then walking on the street is not a problem.
Dennis?
Yeah, I share your sentiments, definitely. And as you said, I think we need to do more with our sports in Bermuda. More meaning more exposure. I was on a conference call this morning with some representatives of the Caribbean Football Union.
Yeah.
And one of my concerns, because they asked, what was one of my concerns being in Bermuda. One of my concerns is, especially with the association of this, because I'm on the player development committee at the BFA, and one of my major concerns is preparation matches prior to tournaments.
Yes.
Prior to tournaments, like we need, and well, a lot of us in the Caribbean in the same boat, because a lot of things I heard this morning was money. So if Bermuda is one of the richest countries in the world, why can't we allocate more funds to our sports? Because, like I said, my concern is practice matches and friendly matches prior to the last, and I think we our expectations went overboard when it came to the last qualifying stage, because personally I wish the team well, but at the end of the day we were way overboard to where we need to be. You know what I mean? So we need to invest a lot more because we had the talent, it shows we could get to that last hurdle. But getting over that last hurdle is probably one of the hardest things these players have ever had to endure. So we need to be serious about our sports, because We all, see people going to the airport and all that, and the team is successful. But what happens, prior to those tournaments has to improve. We have to also look at improving our football.
Mhm.
How can we do that? Semi-pro, a lot of Earl players and myself have been talking about creating a semi-pro league, which will give us more weight in dealing with players' responsibility and accountability. But these things need to be talked about and thought about. So to just ask Norbert, because I know Norbert came from Sands, I think he went to Bermuda College after that.
Yeah, I've been Hotel College, yes.
Right, the Hotel College.
Yeah.
And then the biggest thing is, as director of sports in Bermuda, how did your earlier experiences as an athlete, coach, and an educator shape your vision for sports development across Bermuda? That's my last question to you.
Okay. Dennis, I'm not too sure I could answer that question, but your frustration has always been my frustration. I think that philosophically in Bermuda, I think we suffer from the big fish, small pond mentality. By that, I think that we are more concerned about being extremely well on the local stage, administratively, player-wise. It's about, as a country, what is going to be our philosophy? And I'm going to say this to you, Dennis, because even when I worked in government, I used to ask the question, what's the national plan? Okay.
Yeah.
What's the national plan? And when it came to football, I asked that question when I started coaching Somerset Juniors. What is the national plan? When I started coaching the first division, what is the national plan? What style of play do you want us to play in Bermuda? What do you want to accomplish? Guide me on what you want. The challenge that we have, I think, then, is that, and everybody says, and everybody always looks at the players, right? We have to have strong administrators. We have to have leadership roles where people are concerned about the development of the sport and not themselves, and not just themselves. Okay? And I think that when it comes to football as a country, and Bermuda is guilty, and in my view, Bermuda is guilty of making sure that our visitors are taken care of and not your own people. Okay? We would, Dennis, if we invested in people like you, invested in people like Andrew Bascom, invested in Bermudians, period. I'm just using you guys as an example, but if we invested in Bermudians, period, and say that this is about national pride, because it's about national pride. The only time we want to sing about national pride is if the team does well. But when you guys, where's everybody?
Yeah.
Right? Where are we? Right? We only want to jump on the bandwagon when you do well. When we got to the next round of the World Cup, that time, everybody wants to make noise about the team. But the team still had the same challenges. Fitness was below par.
Yeah.
Preparation was below par. You have a national stadium that you can't use when you need to.
Yeah.
Okay? And I'll hop back on the days now that we have track and field, and because I have to tie it in, because we send our kids out to battle with a toothpick while somebody else has got a gun.
Yeah.
Okay, what I'm saying is that we want our athletes to go and compete on the world stage, but we're not prepared to give them the necessary tools to be successful. And by tools, I mean is that it doesn't always have to be semi-pro, Dennis. It doesn't have to be paying individuals, because when you guys playing football, you weren't getting paid, quote unquote.
Yeah,
right?
Yes, I was. Yes, I was.
Yeah, I mean, what I mean is that there was a little side money on the side.
Well, not from the club. Yeah, not from the club. Yeah.
Not from the club. What I'm saying is, right? What I'm saying to you is then is that if we made a plan as a country, okay, this is what first of all, we have to set a goal. We have to set targets. What do we want to accomplish? We can't wake up in 20, what's this year, 2025? We can't
26.
this is 2026. We can't come up and say, oh, in September of 2025, I'm going to try and qualify for the World Cup. Can't. Okay? Same thing in track and field. You can't talk about you're going to wake up on January 1st and talk about I'm going to pick a team to go Carifta. Not possible, right? And to be successful, you could have a team to go, but it's not going to be successful. What are the plans? In year one, this is what our target is going to be. By the time we get to year 4, we should know where we are. We cannot talk about because, okay, we know football, we know the World Cups every 4 years. So we're going to wait to year 3 to get ready? So you're going to wait to year 3. You know that between year 1, okay, identify who you want as players in your national squad. Identify, right? Do your talent research. Identify these players and put them on the program. One of strength and conditioning, right? First of all, we have to accept that we have small players. So we have to do things to make them strong enough to compete and come up with a game plan so they can compete. I don't see the point in talking about you're going to play a 40-yard pass to a striker that's 5'8", going up against a 6'4" player. Okay, so we have to identify what our strengths are as a team, and that's in all sports. Then, it's the same with track and field too. Identify what our strengths are, and set out a plan for it, and then say, okay, and educate the public on it because, okay, 8 years, we have to have an 8-year plan for football. Bypass the next World Cup. You go in it to get your measures, but the public's got to be educated too. This is what our target is. We have to reach these goals. What are we going to do to get to those goals? And until we decide that we're going to sit down and have a strategic plan to get to that place, we're not going anywhere, right? What's the definition of insanity? Keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result? Because the only thing that's really benefiting right now in all sports are your officials. Think about it. We have not sat down with our players and said, okay, guys, this is where we want to go. This is what we need to do, and this is how we have to go about doing it. You have to get buy-in from your players. Because right now, I think your players are just happy playing on Sundays. Track and field the same way. We're not serious. I mean, we could talk all night about it, right? Because, I have my own personal frustrations, right? About what it is that we want to do. We keep having people in charge, and what is the plan? What is the ultimate plan of the BFA? What is the ultimate plan of track and field, cricket, and the rest of them? Not just to show up to say I'm going to enter the ICC tournament because it comes up every year. What are we doing to try to get there, right? And so that's been my frustration, even as director. What is the plan? What do you want to accomplish, right? Okay, because we know as a country we could produce some of the best officials around, and we proved it. You got David Sabert, you've got Donald Watson, Donald Rayner. What's he calls himself now? I don't know.
Rayner.
Freddie Evans. You got all these guys who can excel at the international level when it comes to administration and things. But what are we doing locally to get not only others at that same level, but what are we doing to get even our club sports at that level? Because if we don't improve our foundation, we're not going anywhere.
Well, I just want to finish because, I share your frustration.
Yeah.
Are people serious?
Yeah.
Because for me to sit up in a minister's office last year and talking about the tournament that I have here, the Bermuda Triangle Cup, and to hear, I'm not calling their names, and I'm not calling their ministry, but this minister told me it's a waste of time bringing in teams like Everton to play in Bermuda. Like I couldn't believe what I was hearing because they're beating up everybody. Like I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. But the words came out. Nobody told me about it. He told me himself
Yeah.
that he thinks Everton are a waste of time coming to Bermuda because they beat up everybody. So that's the mentality that we're dealing with to take our sports to another level. That's the mentality that we're dealing with.
Yeah, and Dennis, you're right. And I think that all sports have been given a great disservice by former players not getting involved in administration.
Yeah.
You know, and it's important because, you know, what they say is takes one to know one,
Yeah.
right? And I think that, and that's where we've had a lot of disservice, not only at the national level, but even at the club level, right? Where we don't have enough people giving back, right?
Right.
But you'll stand on the sideline, like I said that time up Somerset. Well, you know, Dennis, you played up Somerset, where your former players will sit on the hill and call you more names than your mama called you, right?
Yeah.
Then you was christened, but rather than come back and share their knowledge, right? And so what happens is we always have these vacuums where everybody that comes into the sport comes in without anybody knowing. For instance, if I ask my kids who Brian Wellman is in track and field, they can't tell me, right? Even though there's pictures on the wall, right? No. How many players know about your exploit, Dennis?
I'm not sure.
Okay, so I'm saying is that the success of all countries in sports is when the athletes know who was before them. English players know more about Clyde Best than Bermudian players, and that's criminal.
Yeah.
You know, Dennis Brown, you're probably knowing more. I'm not gonna call you the names, Dennis. All right, you know, you're probably knowing more outside of Bermuda than you are in your own country.
Yeah.
Call it what it is, Dennis. And so we have not done a good job of educating our kids in sport and in Bermuda, period, right? We know more about American history. We know more about Michael Jordan. We know more about Maradona. We know more about all these guys than we know about other people in this country. And so we talk about national pride. But we're not serious, right? Because we talked about national pride, Clyde Bass would have been knighted a long time ago. We talk about national pride, Dennis, and people like you would have been honored for what you've accomplished in football, right?
Yeah.
We talk about national pride, and Brian Wellman, who's a world record holder, indoor world record holder, gold medalist, Conforn was working on the dock in Bermuda. Really? And now he's doing coach a university team overseas because we showed him no respect.
Yeah.
So if we're going to start talking about how we're going to improve sports, how we're going to improve everything in this country, let's start showing people the respect that they're due. All right? Because the people that get the most respect in Bermuda are anybody that comes here from 25 miles off coast Bermuda with a damn accent that's not Bermudian is showing reverence and respect. But your own people are not.
Yeah.
So when we talk about your frustration and my frustration and others' frustration about why we're not doing well in sports, where are the role models? Everybody in Jamaica knows Usain Bolt.
Yeah.
Everybody in Jamaica knows Donald Quarry.
Shelly Ann Fraser Price.
That's right. Everybody knows Courtney Walsh in Jamaica.
Yeah.
Right? But Dennis Brown or Norbert Simons, you did something stupid as a child, that's what you damn well remember. And not what was accomplished. Right? And what you contributed to this country, right? And that's my frustration. And Andrew Bascom, all you guys, Kenny Thompson, all you guys, I could go on in all sports who have done great things in the sport, but have not been given recognition and the credit and the things that you do. And so young people come behind you. Why should I want to represent Bermuda? And this is how you treat these people. I'm sorry, guys, for getting off.
That's fine. Hey, that's in your mind. So yeah.
Hey,
exactly.
and I only swore once. Yeah, so, if you're asking about a pet peeve and a pet thing, is that, and I'm not just talking about just in sports. I'm just talking about in every walk of our life in this country, right? Gina Swankson, I say this, Miss World, run-up Miss Universe. Do we talk about it? Do we talk about her accomplishments? Do we?
Clarence Hill.
Yeah, but I'm sorry, Dennis. I'm not going on that rib review of Dan Clarence Hill. But you're right. But Dan Clarence Hill in his heyday and prime should have been acknowledged and the like, right? Clarence, Nikki Saunders, all these guys in that.
Nikki Saunders, yeah.
Right? Should have been
world class.
Yes.
Nikki Saunders.
You know what I'm saying? When I was director, we tried to do something for those guys. It may not be what everybody wanted, but we tried to acknowledge them, right? Nikki Saunders was acknowledged. Clarence Hill was acknowledged. But Clarence didn't get what he wanted, or other people thought he felt he should have got. But that's another story. We could talk about that all damn night. But look at the accomplishments, right? Look at the National Sports Center. And you know what? I know we're running over, right? But I had asked that before I retired. I asked that, can we make that walkway pictures of all of our sporting heroes: Clyde Best, Sean Goda, Nikki Saunders, Sonia Smith,
yeah,
Caldy, and the rest of them. At least when people walk in National Stadium, they could see photos of our heroes, right?
Yeah.
But you want to call it walkway Beyonce Boulevard? Really?
Yeah.
Really? You know, someone who came in the scene for a half hour look like that. They want to name that area after her, Beyonce Boulevard. Really? So what does that say to us as a people? That we celebrate everybody else, but we don't celebrate our own, and then we wonder why we're not growing. I'm sorry, Earl.
That's fine. Hey, listen.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Yes. Well, Mr. Simons, I want to thank you for taking us back and bringing us forward, because obviously these type of discussions have to be had in order for us to move forward, for our young people to understand what was accomplished before them to get them to where they are today. And then, we can grow as a country. And you hit the nail on the head. We have to start doing things for ourselves, respecting ourselves. And that's first and foremost. So let's hope that's a step in the right direction.
You know what they say, Earl? Without a vision, a nation shall perish.
Yeah. So true.
Yeah.
All right. Well, welcome back to the walk down memory lane, Dennis.
Yes. Yeah. Good to be back.
Yes, you said the late great Jimmy Tweed was the one who kind of twisted the arm to get it back, and we're back, and we'll figure out a way to get some of those players that played against him, played with him on the show, just to talk about back in the day when the orange and black were a team of strength, which are
they were bridesmaids.
Huh?
They were bridesmaids.
Let's see what happens this time around, because the fighting hard right now.
Go position.
And they deserve. Ray Jones has to be given a lot of credit.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, for sure.
Man, I mean, we putting aside all the skullduggery, Ray has to be given a lot of credit, because his stock with Devin Coach through thick and thin.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we have to again we have to acknowledge that. Take the personality out of it, because this is the problem that we have in this country. Everything's personal, right?
Yes.
If I don't like you, you ain't never gonna make it.
Yeah.
And if you did something when you're 10 years old, I'm going to throw it up in your face when you're 70.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Yeah.
All right, gentlemen. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Simons. You enjoy the
Thank
rest
you.
of your night. Dennis,
You as well,
we'll
gentlemen.
be back in 2 weeks' time
Yeah,
with
2
another
weeks.
edition of Walk Down Memory Lane. Okay?
All right.
Okay,
Thank you,
thanks.
brother.
All right, cool.
Okay. Cool.
All right.
All right.